Hi friends! In this video, you'll see how two fully functional and practical items, a bicycle and a handcart for transporting goods, can be made using simple materials, essential tools, and basic workshop machines. We'll walk you through the entire process, from cutting metal tubes to final painting and assembly. Bicycle manufacturing does not require large-scale corporations or industrial facilities. It can be carried out with the appropriate tools, machinery, and sufficient technical knowledge. To begin the process, we will need metal tubes, which must then be cut to the required dimensions. After the tubes are cut into smaller sections, their edges must be further processed using specialized machines to ensure a precise fit for welding. This is essential for assembling the bicycle frame, the core structural component, which must be welded with high precision and reliability. For accurate and straight welding of the frame, the tubes are placed in a specialized jig where they are securely clamped to prevent warping or misalignment during the welding process. The operator manually welds the frame using a welding machine. This process must be carried out with high quality and reliability, as the frame forms the foundation of the bicycle's structural integrity and safety. The weld seams are clean and uniform, making it difficult to tell that the frame was welded in a small workshop rather than at a large-scale factory. Next, mounting brackets for brake and gear shift cables must be welded onto the frame. The first stage is complete. The main triangle of the frame is finished. The next stage involves manufacturing the part of the frame where the rear wheel is mounted. For this, a steel tube of smaller diameter is required. First, it is bent using a specialized machine and then securely welded following the same high-quality standards. The final step is welding the top section, after which the frame is fully completed. To allow for securing the seat post and adjusting its height, a seat post clamp mount must also be welded to the frame. Accordingly, to enable installation of the rear brake, a dedicated mounting bracket was also welded onto the frame. To give the bicycle frame an aesthetically pleasing appearance, it must be painted. However, before painting, the surface should be degreased and thoroughly cleaned. The frame is painted in a dedicated spray booth equipped with an exhaust system to prevent dust contamination and to ventilate paint fumes. The next layer will be decorative, applied to give the bicycle frame an attractive appearance. After the second coat of paint is applied, the worker places the frame in a drying area. And finally, the third and final coat in red is applied. This is how the finished product will look. The frame is placed in a drying oven. Once it has fully dried, decorative decals and branding stickers can be applied to give the bicycle a modern appearance. Once the main part of the bicycle, the frame, is completed, which represents about 80% of the total build, the next step is to manufacture the front fork that holds the front wheel. This involves cutting a tube of the required diameter and length, after which both lower ends of the tube are compressed using a specialized machine. Using the next machine, holes are drilled into the flattened ends of the tube. These holes are used to mount the front wheel. To make the fork functional, the next step is welding and attaching the steerer tube, which will ultimately hold the handlebar. The finished fork looks like this. However, before it is installed on the bicycle, it must also be treated and painted to give it a market-ready appearance. The fork is painted following the same procedure as the frame. Once nearly all components are ready, the final step for the worker is to assemble the bicycle. The fork is attached to the frame along with fenders that protect against water and dirt. Once assembled, the worker moves the frames to another station, where a specialist installs the auxiliary components such as brakes, gear shifters, derailleurs, and chain rings to make the bicycle fully functional. After the brakes are installed, the bottom bracket is mounted first, as it will later serve as the base for attaching the pedals. The next step is installing the seat post for the saddle, as well as inserting the fork into the head tube of the frame. Since this bicycle is a budget model, it will not feature suspension in the front fork. Instead, it will have a rigid fork. However, rubber covers will be added in the areas where suspension components are typically located to simulate their appearance. The next step is assembling the handlebar, followed by attaching the brake levers and rubber grips. As you can see, the handlebar now has a neat and presentable appearance. The worker now installs and secures the large front chain ring. The next step is the installation of the chain and the chain guard. While the bicycle is still in an upside-down position, both the front and rear wheels are installed. Since the rear wheel includes the sprocket, the chain is placed onto it before the wheel is securely fastened to the frame. We are now witnessing the final stage of the bicycle assembly. The workers attach the kickstand so the bicycle can stand upright, install the rear plastic mudguard and mount the saddle. The bicycle is now fully assembled and ready for sale. Protective films and bubble wrap have even been applied. You are now going to see the process of making a handcart for transporting goods using an old metal barrel. To begin, the worker makes a horizontal cut along the metal barrel, then separates the top and bottom parts, the bottom and the top. After cutting off the top and bottom of the metal barrel and slicing it lengthwise, the worker obtains a single sheet of metal. To cut out the required shapes, the worker attaches pre-made templates to the metal sheet, traces their outlines, and then begins cutting the desired forms from the sheet metal. Once the required shapes are cut out, a worker straightens them by running them through a large 2-roller roller press. Right now, you can see the craftsman cutting a base for the handcart out of sheet metal, where the load will be placed and transported. Later, he will fold it along the marked lines to form a tray, which will only need a wheel and a handle welded on for convenient transportation. The base of the tray is now ready. It needs to be securely riveted to hold its shape and ensure structural integrity. Aluminum rivets are probably the most suitable choice for this task. To avoid accidental injury, the worker decided to fold the edges of the sheet metal tray along the perimeter of the structure. To reinforce the structure, it was decided to rivet a metal edge along the top section. The final step is to weld the chassis of frame with handles for transportation to the tray. The wheel will also be mounted onto this frame. After all the work on the handcart is completed, the only thing left is to attach the wheel and the cart is ready for use.